Okay, picture this. You've just sat down in a massive university lecture hall. You open your notebook, and literally, within 5 minutes, you feel like you're already drowning in information. Sound familiar? You are definitely not alone. Academic lectures can feel like this relentless fire hose of data. But what if I told you there's actually a hidden cheat code to surviving and even mastering this crazy academic pace? Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're digging into Lesson 46, Understanding Lecture Introductions. We are going to decode the very first few minutes of a lecture, showing you exactly how to listen for specific cues that will hand you a mental map for the entire hour. All right, let's dive right in. Here's our roadmap for today's Explainer. We're going to cover the lecture survival map, finding the rationale, identifying the aims, spotting the limitations, listening for signposts, and finally, how to master your next lecture.
Part 1. The Lecture Survival Map. Let's talk about navigating that academic pace.
So first, we have to understand the room you're walking into. To figure out why you feel so overwhelmed, we've got to look at things from the professor's perspective for a second. The source material highlights this really fascinating concept among university teachers called coverage is control. What does that actually mean? Well, it means your professors are often incredibly stressed out about covering every single piece of material listed on their departmental syllabus. Because of that pressure, lectures become super fast-paced. It's like a race against the clock. The text notes that lots of students, and we're talking native and non-native English speakers alike, simply cannot keep up with this pace. The sheer volume of information is huge, and the format is literally designed to deliver it as fast as possible.
Let's ground this in reality. Imagine you're right there, sitting in Lecture 3 on graduate employability with Dr. Siobhan Cleary. The room goes quiet, and she starts speaking. If you just sit back and try to transcribe every single word she says, you're going to lose the thread by minute 10, for sure. The solution to this coverage is control problem isn't to write faster. No way. The trick is to actively predict the lecture structure right from the opening moment. And to pull that off, you need to listen for 3 specific things, starting with our first pillar.
Moving to step 2, finding the rationale. Or, basically, why on earth are we here?
The very first thing you need to decode when the professor opens their mouth is the rationale. So the rationale is the justification and background context that explains exactly why a specific topic is on the table today. You know, an academic introduction usually moves from the general down to the specific. The rationale is your starting point. It provides the initial context, the why is this important, or why are we looking at this specific gap in the research. If the professor just jumped straight into the raw data, you'd be totally lost. The rationale anchors you. It gives you the broader reason for the next hour of your life.
Step 3, identifying the aims. What exactly are we going to cover?
Okay, so you know why you're there. Now you need to know where you're going. This brings us to the aims. The aims are basically your direct compass for the lecture. They represent the main points, the core thesis statement, and the specific questions the lecturer actually intends to answer. And here's the best part. Professors will often present these aims both visually on a slide and orally. By identifying the aims in those first few minutes, you are essentially getting a sneak preview of your own notes. Think about it. If the aims state 3 core questions, you instantly know your notebook should have 3 main sections. It's that predictive power that keeps you one step ahead of the fast-paced delivery.
All right, part 4, spotting the limitations. What are we skipping today?
Guys, this right here is a secret weapon that so many students completely overlook. Limitations are the specific boundaries of the lecture. They explicitly define what is outside today's scope. Why does this matter? Well, because academic topics are massive. A lecture cannot possibly cover everything about global economics in a single hour. So by stating limitations, the professor is telling you exactly what they are not going to talk about. Recognizing this is brilliant because it tells you what you can completely ignore. It saves you from waiting around for information that simply isn't coming, and that allows you to focus your mental energy purely on the actual target.
Think of how these two concepts work together to create a sort of container. We've got the aims, what we will cover today, and the limitations, what is outside today's scope. If learning is a box, the aims are everything inside that box, and the limitations are the walls of the box itself. By establishing both of these in the first 3 minutes, the lecturer has just handed you a perfectly defined container for your learning.
Which brings us to Part 5, listening for signposts. How do we actually hear this map?
So, we know we need to find the rationale, the aims, and the limitations, but how do we actually catch them in real time? The answer is signposting language. Academic lectures are surprisingly formulaic, which is fantastic news for you as a listener. Professors use specific, repeated phrases to signal exactly what they're doing. Phrases like, firstly, I'm going to talk about, or what I want to focus on, those are massive neon signs pointing directly to the aims. Conversely, when you hear, I won't be able to go into detail on, a giant alarm should go off in your head. That is a limitation. These phrases are literal signposts on your educational journey. They let you relax and just listen for the cues, rather than straining to translate every single word.
Let's see how this plays out in a real-world example. Here's a direct quote from a lecture by Dr. Kathleen Quinlan on higher education. She says, "So our talk addresses three main questions today. So I'll highlight some key ideas from the field." Did you catch the clear signposting? Addresses three main questions today is an absolute, undeniable statement of her aims. If you hear this, you immediately jot down numbers 1, 2, and 3 in your notebook, ready to catch those questions. She has essentially given you the structural blueprint of her talk before she's even started the main content.
Now let's check out another quote from Dr. Quinlan's exact same introduction. While you will get some very practical tips, we must first understand the assumptions that underpin higher education in English-speaking countries. Okay, this is an absolute masterclass in setting a limitation. Did you spot it? The limitation is in English-speaking countries. She is explicitly telling the audience that she will not be covering higher education in Asia, South America, or anywhere outside the English-speaking world. If a student was sitting there waiting for a comparative global analysis, well, they now know it's not happening today. That is the sheer power of spotting the limitation.
And finally, Part 6. Master your next lecture. Let's apply this cheat code.
Now that we've deconstructed the whole anatomy of the introduction, let's talk about how you apply this tomorrow morning. Take a look at this table from our source materials, which analyzes how these features are typically presented. Notice the columns marked O for orally and V for visually. The lecture title and biodata, those are often visual. But look at the rationale and aims. They're usually presented both orally and visually. Now look closely at limitations. According to this data, limitations are almost exclusively presented orally. What does that mean for you? It means if you're only staring at the slides and not actively listening to the signposting language we just talked about, you will miss the boundaries of the lecture entirely. This just proves that active, engaged listening during those first few minutes is absolutely mandatory.
Which brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. What if the secret to understanding a dense, super fast-paced, one-hour academic lecture isn't having a photographic memory, but simply mastering the first 3 minutes? By actively hunting for the rationale, pinpointing the aims, and clearly marking out the limitations using signposting language, you completely transform yourself. You go from being a passive receiver of overwhelming information to an active navigator of your own learning. So, I challenge you, in your very next class, don't just write frantically. Listen for the map. See how it changes the rest of your hour. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.